We're in gate 31. We've just come into gate 31, the gate of leading, the gate of influence, and we're looking at the first line, which is called manifestation. The first line of a hexagram, it always gives us the truth of its expression. And there is a lifetime learning here that says influence cannot exist in a vacuum. This is the whole thing about collective leadership. That's why we have a symbol of that in our democracies, which is that those who are in power by the will of the majority. They've been voted in, they've been recognized and invited to take that position. This is the nature of collective leadership. The nature of being an alpha, it's not as we translate it from the alpha world, the animal world. It's not that you have a natural capacity to be able to lead, but that you have a natural capacity to be able to integrate with those who have asked you or want you or who help you to become the leader. Because that's your gift. Your gift here is to be chosen by others to lead. You're to be selected or to be chosen. In the exaltation, we have the sun does not and cannot hold back its light, and thus its influence on every life. The natural expression of leadership. This is the first line. It's introspective. The first line is saying, what is it to be a leader? How do I act out this leadership role? How do I lead? And how do I get others to follow me? How do I get others to let me be the leader and then get to a position where I can organize them and tell them what to do? The lifetime learning is that influence cannot exist in a vacuum. This is a life process. This is something that has to be learned over the course of a lifetime. Not the whole lifetime, maybe. I think it's up until about the Chiron return, so around 50. And that's sort of that time when the sixth line is coming down off the roof. That's when these lifetime learning things, hopefully one has had the experience to grow into them. And here it's learning that influence does not exist in a vacuum. It's very simple, really. You have to learn that you can't just say, I will lead you. You have to learn that it's up to others. You're not there on your own. It's up to others and your relationship with them. And that gives you the potential to lead. In the detriment, we have the absorption of light that in darkness can only promise manifestation, the unnatural expression of leadership. So we have this natural, unnatural expression of leadership, and it's very subjective, really. Hitler had the detriment here. He had the 31-1 in the detriment. So he's a classic example of that detriment. We can look at him and look at those qualities. And it tells us that the capacity to have influence is about how you play the role of leader. Now you find out what it means to be a leader, and then you play that role. And Hitler had all of the theatre of leadership. He had really sorted that out, really. He had the uniforms and the funny march and the flags and the showmanship and all of that, holding his rallies in huge theatre type environments. And he was the first one to really pull all of that together. He was a kind of archetype of what it is to find a way to both be attractive to others and to get, yes, I'm coming. Oh, for goodness sake. Excuse me, I've got a blackbird in here now. Out. Okay. Okay, so they come in and it's raining. You won't believe how hard it's raining. So they're all very bedraggled and sad. And they come in and they can't get out again and they poo all over the windowsill. It's a joy. My life with blackbirds. Maybe no, anyway, moving on. Gate 31, Hitler, theatre, big theatre he had going on, he had all that. He knew what it took to have influence over people and to get them to invite him in. He was, took the position of being chancellor, and then he started influencing, and people started doing what it was that he wanted them to do. So gate 31 is a very political gate. So the first line, called manifestation, in the throat being the great center of manifestation. And of all the 384 lines, this is the only one that is called manifestation. And it's a key. It's fundamental to understanding gate 31. And remember the relationship that exists between the logical process and all other forms of life. Whether you're looking at plants or animals or insects or the single cell, you're dealing with forms that have something in common, and that commonality is logic. They all have gate 15, all of them. Logic is hugely important for us as a species. Without secure patterns upon which we can project into the future, it puts an enormous strain on our ability to survive. It makes us really fearful if our security is undermined in any way. That is why logic is so important to us, in order to understand how things actually operate in fact, and out of that to recognize how we can move into the future. Yet there's no guarantee about the future, of course there isn't. But if we can look at the patterns and we can extrapolate how we think these are going to work because we've tested them and tested them and tested them again, then that gives us a secure footing. And this is why we look for logical, natural leadership, and why we are disturbed by illogical, unnatural leadership. Influence cannot exist in a vacuum. It's a simple phrase, and it's really good to contemplate. It's the foundation of leadership. And leadership is important in our materialistic third line world. Every leader knows that they are only as strong as those who follow them. So influence is the foundation of leadership. There's no leader who comes out of this channel 731 who can be of any value unless those that have chosen them are willingly serving them and following them. This is not the tribal gate 45, who's just in that position because they were born into it or they fought their way to the top somehow. This is a collective leader. They're dependent on the energy of the collective to maintain them. And if we don't like our politicians, then we overthrow them or we vote them out. Without collective support, they cannot maintain their leadership. Unnatural or natural leadership, for good or bad. We get really hooked up on these sort of judgments and the prejudices around some of these things. I saw someone I didn't see someone, I saw a post that someone had written in a human design Facebook group. And they said that they'd gone into a deep depression because they found out that they had the same incarnation cross as Hitler. It's really easy for the mind to get involved with this and go a bit crazy, and we get hooked into it, and it's just not necessary. And we don't have to look at the 31-1 in detriment. Oh no, this is terrible. This is terrible. Because it's not about that. It's simply about recognizing that there are two ways to bring influence. There are patterns that bring light, and there are patterns that bring darkness. It's just the way that it works. And even our ideas of light and darkness are subjective. It's all part of leadership. It's all part of life, really. And it's all there, all of it, all the time, one side or the other, because this is the nature of all things. So leadership can appear both dark and light in our process. And we have that in any kind of political leadership. The moment we're unhappy with a political leader, we begin to demonize them and we try and sort of portray them as a dark force. And the moment that we elect somebody new, we're very excited about them and they become our light force. After all, remember that a leader is dependent on the energy of its followers. This is something that should never be forgotten. So it's worth bearing in mind that all of our leaders are simply a representation of the energy of their followers. And contemplate that, because it can be really instructive when you're looking at even your town or the world that you live in, your country, the wider stage of things. Look at your elected leaders and see, how are they presenting themselves? What are they representing? Because they are the energy of the people who invited them into leadership, who voted them in, who follow them and support them. So the sun in gate 31 is grounded by the earth in gate 41. The first line here is called reasonableness, and it has the lifetime learning that says the appropriate delegation of responsibility. So wonderful. And this seems fairly straightforward, really, having leaders who are grounded in being reasonable and who know how to delegate when necessary. I'd quite like to vote for those leaders, possibly. Interesting to see the rest of their manifesto, but it's a good start, isn't it? So we currently have a channel with the Sun and Venus. Venus is in gate 7. So this is the Alpha. It's a design of leadership for good or bad. And we heard a little bit about this in the overview when I did that earlier for gate 31. We know that this is a projector channel with the potential for a leadership role. This is logical. It's future-oriented. It's a collective channel. And it's focused on understanding patterns and presenting them to the collective. Leadership is always best when it's recognized and invited. So the moon, the bella luna, the luna, the luna is still in gate 62, which is the throat gate of detail. And it moves into the individual solar plexus gate 22 at 1821. And this is the gate of grace. It's the gate of openness. Got blackbird wars out there. One day I'm going to turn the camera around and just do the whole thing while you're watching the blackbirds. Probably be a lot of fun. It might be a bit distracting though, but it would be fun. Yes. Would you like to be a star? They're so sweet. Okay, so where am I? Goat 22. Goats and blackbirds. Goat. Focus. Gate 22 is a solar plexus gate of openness. Okay, so it has the quality of behavior best suited in handling mundane and trivial situations. It's a gate that needs to honor its moods. And it's when it's honoring its moods that there is the greatest potential for an emotional openness and a graceful social interaction that makes it naturally attractive to others. The abstract collective solar plexus gate 36 is next at 3:38 tomorrow morning, the darkening of the light. This is the gate of crisis, and it operates on the rule of cycles. And we find in here that the decline is natural. The decline is natural, but not enduring. So there can be deep insecurities here. It's an awareness gate, and all the awareness gates have either a fear, nervousness, and anxiety. And so here we have a nervousness, really, or an insecurity around the level of experience that one has. Similar to its mirror gate 48, which worries about being caught out. It's the gate of depth, and it worries about not having enough depth. Here we have one of the gates of experience, and it worries about not having had enough experience or the right kind of experience. And so that drives it into having more and more and more experiences. And it becomes, of course, part of the jack of all trades, because that's what it's called when it's in the channel with the 35. So more and more, which is fine if it is correct for that to happen. But not, of course, if it isn't. It's part of a manifestor channel, so there can be some anger, some real power through this emotion. And we do actually have the channel at the moment because Jupiter is in gate 35. So the channel, jack of all trades, it's the channel of transitoriness. So experiences, part of a cycle, they're beginnings, middles, and ends. They're transitory, they don't last. And so these experiences, they lead to progress. And that tells us then that crisis, because gate 36, gate of crisis, crisis leads to progress. It's a natural progression. Yeah, my mum used to say something about people who amused themselves, but I can't remember what it was, but it probably wasn't very nice. So people with this channel, they can have a tendency to jump into experiences that lead to crisis before noticing the progress or having any kind of evaluation around that. So as I said, it's an emotional channel. So there can be an emotional channel. It is an emotional channel because it's a throat to the solar plexus. I meant it's a manifest channel. So the emotional expression that can come out of this can be quite explosive and quite volatile. So this is not about mastery or repetition. It's a pure emotional power that can have quite an impact, and it can be quite hard to contain. Yes, 31-1. 31-1 with blackbirds, extra blackbirds. Thank you very much for joining me. And as always, go gently and thank you for your company. Bye-bye.